it's me, Lacey, and I'm here again with Jordyn. If you haven't listened to our first interview together, you should go back and listen to that first, I think. But these are going to be great, kind of synonymously, I think. This is the natural follow-up because she did a great interview, and I know a lot of people benefited from the information that she shared in our previous time together. But now we're going to be sharing a resource that she has that I think is really exciting for everyone. I wish we had this resource before we got our pup, but we are excited that now everyone has it or has access to get it. And yeah, Jordyn, welcome back.
Thanks for having me back. I'm excited to dive into this conversation and share a little bit about my new book.
Yeah, so big moves. You guys, of course, are doing a ton of things on your homestead. They have a small homestead. It's about an acre, more than acre, a little bit more than
Acre and a quarter.
acre and a quarter. And they're doing incredible things. They have a massive market garden. They're using every square inch of it. They're regeneratively grazing the whole place. And they have a puppy breeding program, which is intensive and it's really smart. And they put out the best puppies at Australian Shepherds you can get your hands on. And we were fortunate enough to get one of those and have been really grateful to have him. And he's become a key member of our homestead. And the resources she was sharing before were sort of like few and far between, and one was even out of print, I remember. And they were okay, but I'm sure that the resource that she has produced now is filling a need that it wasn't filled before. So let's talk about what you were using before and then how you kind of made your own thing out of all of that. And I'm curious, does it include like training puppies? Are you including that? Or is it really more just like using a dog for work? Or, I mean, let's start at the beginning. What inspired you to write this book and where did you begin?
Yeah, absolutely. So, being a research person, I love researching something before I get into it. Um, my journey with herding dogs, yes, I had the Australian Shepherds before, but really it started back in 2020 when we added Ray, our working line bred Australian Shepherd. And that was where I just tried to do as much research as I possibly could on training, on getting herding dog books, watching countless YouTube videos, and finding a good trainer that I could in our area, which of course I didn't find one in our area per se, but over 2 hours away from me anyways. And so that was like a whole day long trip as Ray and I would get up, we'd do the chores, and then her and I would drive 2 hours, go to herding lessons for several hours, and then get home late that night. And we did that once a week for, I think, about 6 months. And, but in the time, picking my trainer's brain a lot was a good part of it. I did go to a couple trials with Ray. And so obviously, learning through osmosis is a thing when you're around people who have a lot of knowledge about what you're there to do. So there was a lot of information in books, a lot of information online, but I found that there was just this missing piece because if you did not want to go ahead and just jump in feet first into the world of using a herding dog, there's not a lot of like super beginner friendly, this is the absolute information you need versus here's everything. And that was the thing that I would get caught up on was like it's very intimidating and there's a lot of gatekeeping of, oh well, you need to be in it for this amount of time before you can have enough knowledge to do this or do that, or uh you know there was just a lot of things, especially during our training lessons, like we would have to rework how Ray's brain wanted to work because at home I needed her to work differently. And so now that I have that knowledge and that experience, it's really interesting to watch Ray, who's 4 years old and has training, and I've trialed with her and she has a couple herding titles. But then I also have her daughter Rogue, who's almost 2 years old, and they work completely different. Ray is a keep everybody calm, collected, work away from me kind of dog. And Rogue's my problem solver. Rogue's my, okay, we're going to go and get the job done now. And so the book really, I wanted it to be here's my experiences, here's what worked, here's what I did when things didn't work out. But I did add in that initial information of live breed matters, how to pick a good puppy, what the basic obedience or what the foundational training looks like with a puppy, all the way up to, okay, we're ready to introduce to livestock. What does that look like?
Mhm.
What kind of body language do you look out for? Is the livestock stressed? Okay, how are you going to get your dog to stop stressing the livestock out? Or, how to kind of determine, all right, this is a good dog to work with. If you already have a dog that you're thinking, oh, yeah, we could probably work livestock. Instead, this book goes, it's okay to be honest with yourself, but you have to be honest with yourself when it comes to all of that. So that's kind of what inspired me to write it, is there was just that gap of being interested in it, but not wanting to go, okay, well, this book has a lot of information on this aspect of it, or this book has this, and you have to read all the books to gain all the knowledge, but then it's just so much to get started. And so this one I wanted to just inspire people, just get started where you're at.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I would say, it's interesting because we had sheep for years. I mean, probably 10 or 12 years. And we were herding them as a family.
Yeah.
Which was pretty stressful. And we've talked about that a lot on the podcast. But yeah, it was not a good situation for our family because, it turns out we're not really designed to be herders. um, and the more our flock became what we wanted it to be, which was wild and like they didn't need vaccinations, they didn't need a lot of medications, they didn't even need a lot of food because they were just foraging. They became
Mhm.
wilder and wilder and harder to manage as humans. And so that was part of the inspiration. First we got rid of the sheep because Drew was like, I just can't anymore, and then we've got cows, right? But I think we'll come back to sheep. But before we can do that, I told Drew, I was like, we can do sheep again. We just have to have a dog. We have to have dogs that can help with the herding because the livestock guardian dogs, they're, it's interesting when you start to really familiarize yourself with breeds, just how differently they behave around livestock completely without, really any training at all. They just do what
Mhm.
they do, right? And our livestock guardians are very naturally like snuggle the livestock and they hang out with the livestock and they bond with the livestock. And that's just really not what we've experienced with Robbie at all. He's not really interested in livestock for more than just getting them where they need to go, which is sort of what we love, and what we needed him for, and what I can't wait until we have sheep again. He works great with the cows, and we love him for that. But the sheep are more challenging than the cows to herd in a lot of ways. Although I think Drew might disagree with me. He herds more cows than I do. But yeah, no, it's been amazing how much he has just been an asset on the farm. We actually happened to watch that show. I can't even remember what it's called. It's about herding dogs in Australia, though.
Mhm.
And it was just fascinating. And they just kept talking about how valuable the dogs are because instead of an employee, which, they would hire guys on these $1 million or million-acre estates to run cows on motorcycles. They would use motorcycles a lot, dirt bikes and
Mhm.
helicopters. And they're like, how much more affordable is a dog? And they never call in sick. And you know what I mean? Like they're really an asset to the farm. And so, if you start thinking about how dogs can be so much more than just pets, because he fills that void too. He's very friendly and everybody loves him. He's a member of the family for sure, more than the guardians because he doesn't stay with the animals all the time.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's just really fascinating to watch him shine. But I think we needed the toolkit to be able to understand what we can even expect from him and then how to get him to do those things. And of
Right.
course, because we got him from you, he was already kind of pre-trained a good amount. Um, but it would be really helpful to have something that kind of gauged the like expectation for like
Mhm.
on the lower end and also the higher end. I think that has been like we didn't know. We just have no idea. Like, okay,
Right.
how much can we expect? When should we let up? Like those kinds of things. Um, but yeah, do you have like an outline for your book? Like you start at like picking the right breed, and it's not just about Australian Shepherds, I assume.
So the focus primarily is me sharing my experience,
Right.
but so the outline, I have it in front of me here, which I think I think that's I'm trying to decide. I feel like this might be Rogue and Robbie, honestly.
Oh,
in that
yay!
picture.
Robbie made
Yeah.
it in the book.
Yeah. So there's another picture in here I have of Finn and Robbie sitting
Oh,
watching the chickens. Um, but so the outline for it is a brief history. So just on herding dogs and like why that's important.
can you
Um,
review really
to
quickly what all breeds are considered herding dogs? Like, I guess if it
yes,
has shepherd in the name, it automatically is a herding dog, right?
kind of. So there's actually 30 breeds that are a part of the American Kennel Club herding group.
Okay.
So like some of the ones that I specifically mention in here is the Australian Shepherd, of course, the Border Collie, the Australian Cattle Dog, the Australian Kelpie, and the Hungarian Moody. But some of the other breeds in here is that I mentioned is like German Shepherds, Collies, Shelties, Belgian Chihuahuas, Bucerons, English Shepherds, Catahoula Leopard Dogs, Corgis, and those are the main ones that I specifically mentioned. But there are 30 breeds that are considered herding dogs. So, and that's also important. Sharing about breed, why one breed would be better over another is like take into consideration your property size, take into consideration the livestock you plan to move, your climate, um, your needs from a working dog. Like, do you want a more independent thinker, an independent worker, dogs that just can go and do the job by themselves? Or, do you want that bond? Do you want a dog that's going to seek the partnership?
Mm.
Um, and so I just kind of share like why that's important because the working style of the dog is just as important as the breed, um, depending on what you have, what you're moving, and whatnot. So I focus on that, and then why and how to pick a puppy. So like why you would pick a puppy versus an adult dog,
Mm.
and why an adult dog might be a better choice in your situation. It just kind of really depends, but I tried to just kind of walk through the whole process. That was something that my publisher kind of challenged me to do is they said, hey, this is great, but we want more. We want you to go back to the basics of adding a puppy. What does it look like to start a puppy off that's going to be a herding dog someday? So like foundational training, teaching working manners, livestock introductions, some basic like uh trying to think of the word, but some basic like lessons to go through with your dog when you're just getting started, and then animal husbandry and how that plays a role into working with a herding dog, and then where to go from here. So just like different resources at the back.
Mhm.
So I tried to just include it all.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's so
Yeah.
important. I mean, I think like you have thought of things that nobody thinks about. When they're initially, you're just like, oh, I'll get an Australian Shepherd. But oh, there he is. The responsibility of having the time and the capacity to train a dog, even if you're not using him for herding, the smarter the dog, the more difficult your work is, right? Like you can get a dumb dog and it's real easy to train them, right? But if you get a
Hmm.
smart dog, then it requires a lot more. I mean, to
Hmm.
help them use their brain in a way that satisfies them. It's kind of like having another kid, right? Like you can't just let them be wild and free. They need something to keep them busy, or they get into trouble. I mean, there's a lot of things to keep in mind. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I mean, in terms of like having Robbie on we are just like shocked sometimes. You can say a full sentence to him and he understands all of it. And then, he has off days too where you're like, what happened? He was not on his game.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
I don't know what went wrong. Um, but
This morning,
overall, yeah, go ahead.
yeah. This morning I was working with Ray and she just kept just kind of overriding what I was asking her to do. Like, no, I'm going to go do this instead. And so I called her over and I had a full conversation with her. I said, I know you know better than to just totally disregard what I'm asking you to do because that wasn't the direction I wanted them to go. That's not where I wanted the sheep to go. And
Yeah.
you just completely blew me off. I'm like, if you want, and I had to put it this way so that pique their interest. I said, if you want to play ball later, then you need to show me that you know how to do this job. And
Ah, that's hilarious.
after I had that conversation, she was back on it, doing the job, listening. We got them where I wanted them to be. And I said, okay, good girl, we will play later now. But it just, yeah, these are such smart dogs where there's certain ones I can have higher expectations of because I know that they know they're smart.
Yeah.
And then there's some dogs where I'm like, yep, you can be left alone. You're fine. You're not going to mess with anything. You're not going to go and do something bad out of boredom.
Yeah.
So, but
And you know what? We actually really haven't had that experience with Robbie at all. He hasn't really gotten into too much trouble. Of course, we keep him fairly busy. We've got a lot of family members to entertain him, and he's got a lot of jobs to do. But the main thing is he really is relentless, pretty much, with the chickens because we have free ranging chickens, and he just
mhm,
can't really handle that. But he wants them
yeah.
all to be in one place, and they're not. So I get it. It's working against his mind. But yeah, I mean, it's so interesting too how unintimidated he is. So I know we would reach out to Jordyn a lot when we got him at first and we were starting to like keep him out there with cattle and whatnot. Not keep him, but have him out there with the cattle. And he was very intimidated at first. He wouldn't really get near them. But I'll tell you now, he's not intimidated. Like he's out there and it's
Mhm,
really fun to watch actually because he does things that I'm like, maybe he's not so smart, but he generally he handles it really, really well and has all the like, the right moves to stay out of danger.
mhm,
But he actually really prefers cattle that have horns for some reason. I don't know, it's like a thing. Um,
hmm,
but he's just really, really very good at managing them. I can see though when we're working the cows how it would probably benefit to have more than one because I think he could definitely use a teammate, right? So he doesn't have to run to one side and then the other. Like they could probably communicate and work that out a little bit more effectively. But
mhm.
him and Drew do a pretty decent job, so it's fun to watch them.
Yeah,
For sure.
definitely. I will sometimes work Ray and Rogue together, and it's been fun to put them into a position where they have to figure out how to work together. Because
Mm,
if they work completely separate, then it's like mass chaos and the sheep just split and scatter and go everywhere. And then they both look at me and I'm like, you guys got to figure it out. You know what we're trying to do out here. You guys
yeah,
have to learn how to work together. And it's good because it trains both Ray and Rogue because neither one of them are used to working as a team because I normally will just take one out at a time. And so when I've put them in the position of, no, I need you both to work together and get the job done together, then it's really cool to watch them communicate with each other of, okay, I'm going to go over here and you're going to go over there. And obviously there's like no words exchanged or anything, but it's just the body language of them changes. And so it's
yeah,
really cool to see.
that is neat. So my curiousness is like, okay, if you took a dog that hadn't been trained and he was 2 or 3 years old, and maybe a well-behaved dog, that was in the shepherd category, how likely do you think it is that you could take a dog like that and actually use them with your livestock?
Pretty likely. So the recommendation that I always give people is if they come from working parents, they're more apt to work. And so that's
That it
that's
is.
why like with our program, I tried to focus on, okay, if we're raising working Australian Shepherds, it's important to me that I am one working my females and because that's what we have right now. Ben is 7 months, so he's got time before we even think about him being part of the program. But if I'm using an outside stud, it's important to me that that's a level-headed, nice working dog. So, rule of thumb, if it comes from working parents, more than likely would make a good working dog. But also, if you are unsure if it's prey drive or herding instinct, um, I just recommend finding a trainer in your area, even if you have to drive a little ways, to do an instinct test. And that's just where someone who has a trained eye who can look at a dog, work livestock, and go, yes, that's herding instinct, or go, nope, that's prey drive. And there's some dogs where they won't be turned on to livestock until they're a few years old. There's some dogs that don't really care about livestock. And so, like for us personally, that's where if you're going to start with a puppy, kind of opposite of that, people who raise working dogs, it's important to have like some sort of instinct test that they do, or some sort of introduction to livestock at a younger age to just kind of say, okay, yes, this dog absolutely needs a working home.
Mhm.
And I think that that's equally as important with that. Now, you can definitely take a couple-year-old dog and start working on herding lessons, but you have to kind of rewire how your brain is going to work too, and how you have to change your responses to the dog in a working setting that's different than like just an obedience setting, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, I think so. Well, that actually is more hopeful than I would have imagined, because I guess I would have thought, oh no, from the get-go, they have to be trained as a herding dog, like, born and bred and ready for that. But I mean, yeah, that's neat. Eventually, you can probably tell if your dog is gonna just by, I would imagine, even if like going to a breeder or person who is an expert on training, it would be helpful. But if your dog expresses interest in the livestock,
Mm-hmm.
so you're saying there's a difference between the prey drive and the instinct to herd. And so you would just
Mm-hmm.
want to notice, like, are they aggressive? Maybe, I don't know, like, versus
Yeah.
just trying to bring them around. I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's why you bring it up.
And and that's where it's different because so having Finn and Pine, those are two boys from our first litter.
Mhm.
They're almost 6 now, and Finn is my chicken herding dog. Won't touch the bird. He's very great. I use him on butcher days because I'll have him jump into the chicken tractor and push the chickens to me.
Nice.
He's a very versatile dog. He'll do whatever I ask him to. His brother Pine is my notorious chicken killer and eater, and he has no cares if he gets in trouble for it. He's just happy that he filled his belly.
Wow.
So that's where like I have the complete opposites, even though they're from the same litter, same
Ah,
parents, raised the same way. But Pine very clearly is not a herding dog. He wants to act like he's helping with his own agenda in mind. But I have to make sure that I go out, do the chores with my herding dogs
mhm.
before he's even let out to go to the bathroom.
Oh, interesting.
Um,
Wow.
yeah, to the point where he will jump the fence and go and collect eggs for himself too and eat them.
Buddy boy.
Yeah.
That
And
is
you yell at him and he's like, that's
eh,
okay. I got what I wanted. It's fine.
oh, like second dog.
Yeah. So that's where like I share my experience about that too in the book because I know what it's like to have a dog that is not a working dog, even though he's bred to be supposed to be.
Yeah.
Um, because not every dog is meant to be a working dog. And that's kind of where doing more research on pedigrees, on just working dogs in general, bringing in some of the older working lines into our breeding program is like where my mindset has shifted because I've seen and experienced
Mhm.
a dog that's from a breed that's supposed to be a working breed, but he does not work. And that, you know, historically wasn't necessarily my fault, but what can I do as a breeder moving forward to preserve the breed and preserve the workability in my lines, in my pedigrees, and my dogs? Because that should be something that all Australian Shepherds are able to do because that's what they were bred for initially.
Well, and it's interesting too because I know, when you're selling dogs in the market, like in general, not just herding dogs, a lot of people are looking for a specific look, a specific, you know, like, especially within the Australian, Robbie is he's a pretty normal looking dog. Like, he doesn't have the pretty blue eyes or anything. He's a
Yeah.
right? But when you are choosing dogs, you don't look at the colors that somebody might want. You look at the personality traits that they're looking for, which I think is very different. And it's like completely opposite, I think, of what most people are doing when they're looking for dogs or even when they're selling dogs. Like, they're looking for a
Mm-hmm.
very specific look and a very, that's what people want. And, like, you might want an orange corgi versus a Pembroke corgi, or I don't even remember what they're called, but you like look for the specific look and get that when you really should be thinking more about that personality. And I don't think breeders
Hmm.
are traditionally doing that at all. And so
Right.
as a consumer, or consumer feels like the wrong word, but an owner as a pet, or not even a pet, but a working dog needer, employer,
Hmm.
I guess is the right word. You need to find somebody who's going to match you with what you're looking for and not just go buy that breed, or not, like it's more than just the breed, really.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And it's really different because of course we'll have people reach out and go, "Oh, well, I want this specific color, this gender, this eye color." And I'm like, if you're really set and adamant on that, then I'm going to refer you to somebody else because that's not my main priority. That's not my main focus for our puppies. Um, and that's where like being honest with yourself about the dog that you have, or being honest with yourself on your time, are you able to take on a puppy and look at training that dog for the next 4 to 5 years before you have a solid working dog? And that sounds really daunting, but that's where, in every aspect of homesteading, you want to make sure something is worth your time and money. And a, a well-bred, trained working dog absolutely is worth it. You
Yeah.
know, it's amazing with Rogue being 20 months, same age as Robbie, obviously, but I am just now getting glimpses of that sweet spot where we've got enough brains and enough training on that I'm like, this just works like butter. This is beautiful. This is what I have dreamed of. This is why we keep going out and training day after day, even though some days I want to rip my hair out and put her in with a sign on the curb that says free dog,
Oh
you
yeah.
know.
Yeah. And Robbie has
But
taste. Yeah. No, but he will. I mean, I will say Drew will come back in more and more. He's like, man, it was so helpful to have Robbie out there. And, some days he's like, Robbie made a mess of it, like, and it made the job
mhm,
harder. But more frequently now, he's like, he just knows what he's doing. And if I tell him, maybe he doesn't do it the way that Drew even instructed, but he kind of sees the bigger picture now. And I think
mhm,
he's also learned restraint more than he's still kind of a baby puppy. And so like we still are like, you're not really like, you're behaving like a baby, like a child,
yeah,
right? And we're starting to see him do that less and less, like just little things. He's learned from our guardian dogs that he should bark at everyone that comes down the driveway, like he's going to protect us. We're like, that is not your job. Do not bark at
yeah,
people. You are not a guardian dog. You lay on the porch and just say hi. Like that's what we want you to do. And
mhm,
he's still learning. And I think we have to be very consistent about that. But he is picking up training from these other dogs. So it's interesting. Like we want them to bark. We want them to be scary. But we don't want
mhm.
Robbie to be. So we have to like learn how to, look at him learning. We need to be aware that he's learning everything, even the things we don't want him to.
Right.
But
That's where sometimes I have to limit, like, especially with my younger dogs, limit their exposure to our older dogs. Because, like, especially with Pine being a chicken killer, I don't want my puppies to think, oh, that's a great thing to do too.
right.
Instead, I want them to work with Finn, who does not touch the bird at all, and they learn how to use body pressure and not use their mouth. And
Yeah.
so you have to be mindful in a different way when you're working with a dog that's eventually going to be a herding dog, I
Right.
think.
Yeah. Well, if there's anything you need to know, it's all in Jordyn's book, and you can grab it. You can order it. We will put a link into all the show notes and the YouTube notes, all the things. Jordyn, do you want to just share with us the fastest way for them to find herding on the homestead?
Yeah, just on our website. So workingaussieshomestead.com. It's under the shop tab, and it's the first thing up at the top there.
Yay. Can you hold it up one more time for us to see?
Of course.
So beautiful. Look at all those. So
Yeah.
which puppies are on the front?
Ray, Finn, and Piper.
Oh,
So Ray over here, Mama to Rogue and Karabi, and then this is Finn, my chicken working dog, and then that's his Mama Piper.
yay. And of course, Jordyn. And then there's sheep in the background. Yeah.
Those are actually our
Oh,
Kuni Kunis
pigs.
when we had
Pigs.
them. Yeah, we
Yay.
no longer have them, but all of the pictures in the book except for the other breed specifics are pictures of us and our dogs.
Oh.
So yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, everyone, go get your copy and start making herding easier for you on the farm. It makes a big difference when you have animals to wrangle. You know, there's always a better way, and the better way is to have these working dogs. So, thank you, Jordyn, for being on the call with us, and sharing, putting all of your knowledge in one place, because that makes life easier for all of us who are trying to make this work. All right. Have a great
Absolutely.
one.
Thanks so much. You too.
Yay! That was great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm glad that we could do that.
Yeah. No, I think
Uh,
every litter we have, I try to figure out, okay, what could we do more? What other resources should there be? What more support should we have available? And so, like, I made the new puppy know-how online course for everybody who gets the new puppy. And we've had 2 litters now of the owners getting that access to the course. And so that covers like 10 weeks to 16 weeks, just like setting the foundation work of leash training, potty training, grooming, socializing, etc.
and that would be
But
for breed.
yeah, that's for any breed. And so we used Ray's second litter when they were 7 weeks old. So it's puppies showing puppy behavior and like talking about, okay, this is how you troubleshoot this. This is how you watch the body language. You know, because a lot of times with socializing, people go too fast too soon. And so that's when you can have like repercussions in a puppy being okay with something later on.
Mhm.
So I had made that course, and then I'm planning within the next few months to make 2 other courses, one for puppies that are 3 to 5 months old, and then one for puppies that are 6 to 8 months old.
Oh, wow.
Because a lot of people will, especially at the market. So one of the markets we go to has a lot of dogs. It's very dog friendly. And a lot of people will look at my poster for the new puppy know-how and they're like, oh, well, I have like a 6-month-old dog, or I have a 7-month-old dog, or I have an 8-month-old dog that they've done no training with. And now they have a little hellion that lives with them.
Yeah.
And now they want to learn, okay, what does training them to walk nicely on a leash, not jumping on people, not barking at things, not doing this, not doing that. And so I was like, all right, it is time. I have a 7-month-old puppy that has minimal training.
Mhm.
Um, Not for any fault of his own. Josh is just busy. And Josh informed me when we got him that he wanted Ben to be fully his dog. And so I was not to help with training, which is fine. But so taking the opportunity of using that, and then of course we have 2 puppies that are 4 months old and 3.5 months old, and so now's the time to use those puppies to showcase
Oh, I
what
love
it looks
that.
like to get started there.
It's so
So
helpful to watch like actual video versus just to read
mhm.
it, like it's way easier to understand for me and to see. So yeah, that's brilliant. I love that. Okay,
Yeah,
we'll have to include this information in our podcast too.
yeah.
People will be excited.
Yes, so those are the courses available online on our website as well under the courses tab. So that's on there is the new puppy know-how for puppies that are 8 to 10 weeks old up until roughly like 16 weeks.
Okay,
So when puppy classes would get started.
very cool. All right, we will include
Yeah.
it.